everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for coming. I know it's the end of the day. It's been a lot of presentations, and you're probably thinking about that Scotch bar down the street. So what I hope to do is to give you something back so that while you're having drinks, you probably say, wow, he was crazy, or he was entertaining, or you know what? He may have made an interesting point that we'd like to have further conversation on. So if you see me in the bar, by all means, stop me. We can continue the conversation if we run out of time here. My name is Gio Pizzoferrato. Everyone just calls me Gio. It's a whole lot easier. Trying to explain the variations of my name kind of irritates me, so Gio, please. I'm the VP of Data Technology at a Canadian company. So I see some of my Canadian compatriots in the room, so thank you for being here. To those of you who are my American friends, you're probably wondering, what the hell is Canadian Tire, and do you guys just do tires? No. So for my American friends, Canadian Tire is an interesting corporation. It's a 95-year-old institution that started off as a gas station. And yes, we sold tires in the early days. The two brothers, the Billis brothers, did start selling tires. Now, it's interesting, though, that over the 95-year history, one of the things that we've done is grow our locations based on our hyper knowledge of the local area that we were serving. As a matter of fact, in the early days, in the early 20s and 30s, the brothers knew everyone who had cars. Cars were kind of a rarity in Canada, especially in certain parts of Canada. The roads weren't even built yet. And so when they would go out on the weekend camping, it was easy for them to see who busted a tire and needed some service. And so they would actually call them out and say, hey, I got that part for you. If you want to bring over your Ford, we can go ahead and fix that. But over the years, we've gone coast to coast. And what's interesting about Canadian Tire is that every Canadian lives at least, as a maximum, 15 minutes from a Canadian Tire retail location. We have over 1,700 locations across all our different banners. And to my Canadian friends, you might say, well, yeah, that's the place where I got my first hockey skates. I got my first hockey stick. Or maybe if you like soccer because it's World Cup, I got my first soccer ball there. Or maybe that's where my parents used to go on the weekend to get their gardening stuff, and I used to go into the toy section or get my fishing and camping gear. We're one of the most iconic, beloved brands in Canada. We have one of the highest Net Promoter Scores. As a matter of fact, even our employees love the brand. They feel it, they breathe it. One of the interesting things about our division is that we also spend quite a bit of time and energy with the Olympic committees. Not only do we sponsor the regular Olympic committees, we also are a heavy proponent of the Paralympics. And children with disabilities, we do a lot with them to help improve their ability to get into sport. It's one of the hardest things for them to do. So we're really proud. The whole Canadian Tire family is united in this. Our employee engagement around our charity events is in the high 90s. So it's nice to see that everyone really lives the mantra of the jobs and joys of being in Canada. Our revenues, when you look at it, you'd say, well, you know what? For a very large retailer that's pretty much saturated all the physical location, your revenue is not that impressive when you think of Walmart or Target. So to my American friends, we are more than Walmart and Target. We are a Walmart, a Target, REI or Mountain Equipment Co-op, and we're a Napa or AutoZone all smushed into one location. So it's really a destination when you come to shop. One of the other things that we have that we really don't talk a lot about is our massive real estate arm. We have a real estate trust that has billions of dollars that's not on our balance sheet. It's a completely separate at arm's length entity, and this is how we run our physical locations. And one last thing, because we thought we would close the ecosystem in the Canadian living space, we are also a Scheduled I federal bank. So we operate as such. And we also have about 900 gas stations across the 401. So if you want to go from coast to coast in Canada, you'll be guaranteed never to have to run out of gas. There's a gas bar location just around the corner. Now, being in the data team, it's really hard for me to sometimes sit there and talk about data with my colleagues. A lot of my colleagues have been at the company much longer than I have. As a matter of fact, there's certain departments they've been together for at least 25 years. And these are the merchants, and these are the planners. And so one of the things that when I go to speak to them, they always say to me, you know what, Gio, that's all good and fancy, but I got a spreadsheet from 10 years ago that I'm still using, and it's fantastic, and your big data platform's never going to replace that. And I got all the knowledge right here in my gut. I can tell you which tire, which fit, which assortment, which city I'm going to sell the most. And that's fantastic. We like that because that's lot of years of experience speaking. But the goal is, at some point, you're going to want to live your life outside of Canadian Tire, and you're going to want to go experience it from a different perspective. We don't want to lose that. We want the legacy to continue. So how can I take what's inside your gut, not literally, but figuratively, and emulate that and teach a machine to do it so that now the legacy that you've left behind continues to ensure our viability as a company for many, many years to come. So we've set off on a journey, a really complicated journey, to become the #1 retail brand in Canada by 2022. And so that means we compete against the Walmarts, the Amazons, and every other retailer that comes to Canada. We believe we have the advantage because of our knowledge of the location, of the individuals, and the communities that we serve. As well, which is pretty interesting, we've collected many years of data. We have data going back as far as we can, our first IT systems built them. And so we got really good, just like everyone else in the industry, at cleaning this data, storing this data, governing this data, and making sure that we were able to show high value for all the amount of extra diligence we put in cataloging this fantastic data store. So as you can imagine, the enterprise data warehouses that we ran, both on mainframe and then later on some proprietary boxes, were pretty much everything you'd think of when you thought of an enterprise data warehouse. You had your data silos, you had your domain experts, you had your data stewards all modeling, and everyone doing a really good job. And that was okay maybe 15, 20 years ago, where if you needed to answer a question, it was okay to take 6 months to model. It was okay to take maybe 1 month to argue about a canonical data model. It was okay to take weeks and weeks and weeks to think about, well, how would I visualize that? Would you like it like this, or would you like it like that? And have very nauseating conversation around why a scatter or a plot chart was more appropriate. But something happened. We call it the digital shift. Obviously, consumers' behaviors started changing, and we all know this, and I hate those hype words about digital taking over the world, mobile, no, it's now web. Doesn't matter. What happened is frictionless became something that large technology companies started to employ in the way they created new audiences or interacted in those segments. Now, for a retailer not to adapt to that is suicide, because if you can't provide the same experience as your competitors, you really start to lag very quickly. And although the value proposition still holds true today, it is only when you acquire the value that it no longer holds true today. So the high value in the work that we were doing was only after IT was able to complete its work. And of recently, it was kind of interesting. It was a little bit of an eye-opener, even for some of the longer tenured executives, when they would say, I don't understand. You told me that this mainframe was no good because things are changing. You spent 4 years and X millions of dollars to get me off of that, and we went with this vendor, and they put all these new boxes. And now you just finished, and 6 months from now, you want to do what? Go buy Hortonworks? What the heck is that? What is this Hadoop elephant thing you want to do? Yeah, it's true. We're going to flip over. Because now what we want to do is we want to pivot on our data much faster than we are able to do today. And so the first part of the journey was going on and explaining why this was not bad, but it was no longer valid. And that's hard to do for executives, especially when they were part of the original decision. Did we make the wrong decision? Did the technology change so much, so drastically, we can't continue to sweat these assets? So it wasn't about trying to convince them on the technology. It was trying to convince them on the use cases. And so one of the things that worked for us was explaining to our executives that this is comparable to you telling me to go and file a large filing cabinet, all my customers by alphabetical order. And then maybe some other primary pieces of information that you'd like me to index is like their address and maybe even what kind of car. If I was smart enough, I would think of these things in advance. Even though you didn't tell me you needed that information, I would just collect it because I'm a data hoarder. And I'll just collect everything and clean it up. And I'm going to spend maybe, 9 months. And I'm going to do all this work, and it's going to be methodical, and it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. And then all of a sudden they come and they say, okay, so give me all the customers that start with the last name C. And I'm able to do that. And you know what? Can you tell me if they all live in the metropolitan area of Toronto? Oh, yeah, I can do that because I kind of calculated that, so I'm cheating. I'm saying, well, look how fast my system is. Here we go. And they're like, hey, that's great. Now, how many of them have criminal records? Because we found out that certain people that go to jail actually buy a lot of toasters. and we want to run a campaign. Holy crap, why didn't you tell me that before I started doing all this work? Now I got to start all over. I need another $1 million. It's a little facetious, the example, but it was not too far from the conversations that we were having. The digital marketers would come in and say, why isn't everything in the cloud? Our mobile team would come and say, I can build all of this very quickly. I don't need databases. I can do this all on the fly. Then we had the traditional databases architects going, you're insane. You can't do this. We need rigor. We need governance. We need security. Not to mention the security guys, I think, had few strokes every time we'd say, well, we'll just throw it in the cloud. So it was all about, look, we still want to deliver the high value to the business, but we also have to fit the number one disruptor that's happening. It's the elephant in the room. If we're going to compete against guys that don't have the same logistic or supply chain issues as brick and mortar, we have to behave like a technology company without losing our retailing roots. And that's pretty hard to do because that's associated to your identity. Customers wanted more personalized offerings. I mean, didn't you just hate when someone would market to you something that was completely irrelevant? What did you do? You deleted it immediately. I don't want diapers. I don't have kids. I don't own a car. I don't want anything to do with tires. And then the next time they would maybe think of something that you actually did like, you would ignore it because you already had the stigma in your head that they don't know me. They can't possibly know what I like. And therefore, there's nothing that they can offer me of value, unless it's some cashback reward. So with this in mind, we started to explain how important it was for us to adopt new technologies. So we started bringing our partners in around Hadoop, the partner ecosystem, to really explain in business terms what it really meant to our business to transform. There was no way in heck I was going to talk to them about Tez or Pig or Hive or non-structured objects that we now had to model. None of that was relevant to our business units. Now, some of them were really cool. They were hiring data scientists, and they would come and they'd be like, well, I have this R notebook. Can I connect it to the SQL database? No. We'll do something else for you. But we needed to change that conversation. So what we wanted to do was to still keep that rigor of consistency, governance, but we wanted to change at the speed about which we could experiment and pivot. So now the conversation became more about, look, I don't care if you don't know the question you want to ask. It's not important to me what kind of questions you want to ask. What you should know is exactly how you want to operate your business. And as you operate your business, what I want you to do is be able to ask me 1 million questions anytime you want. And the team should be able to give you the tools and the ecosystem where you could either do that yourself and pull out those answers, or if they're more complex, the team will be there to help you, to support you as you pivot. And the cost. So it sounds too good to be true. Well, we took the approach of let's create a commodity internally so that we didn't have to lock ourselves into vendors and in some of the instances, the high cost with picking one dark horse. So what we did is we pretty much looked at the ecosystem and we started going through our partner list and really changing the conversation. I don't want to buy a subscription from you. I don't want to buy a box from you. I don't want to buy a service from you. I want to buy your thought leadership. I want you to come and be part of my problem-solving team. And this was hard because the vendors don't normally behave this way, but the ones that listened added an immense amount of value. So it wasn't about cost. Yes, we're always cost-conscious. We're a retailer. We have one bad quarter. Things go bad very quickly. However, by changing the conversation now, it encouraged us that the path that we were forging, although very new to us, was worth it because we had partners who were willing to put skin in the game and help us all along. And so because of that, we were able, in a very short period of time, create an architecture that allowed us to achieve our objectives. So there's two aspects to our architecture. There's the experimentation, or what we call the lab, the ability to not worry too much about the structure of the data. We generate about 45 terabytes a month. So as you can see, we're generating quite a bit from our source, our records of source. And then eventually, when we answered the question and we wanted to continue to repeat that process, we didn't want something so bespoke that it took many engineers and many days or many weeks to replicate. We wanted to productionalize a lot of those models so that they'd be automated and then governed. And then I can get the other half of my brain. I'm the data governor at Canadian Tire. And so I have all the external auditors, the internal auditors always screaming at me, either through this year or that year. You're contravening your own policies. Creating that reassurance so that I didn't have to go in front of the board, in front of the audit committee, and explain why we're doing certain things with our customers' data. So once we factorized, well, it's not even a word, but in Canada we speak many languages, so we just invent them as we go. So you have to apologize. I have to apologize for that. So what we did is then we said, okay, you know what? Once we made the models production, or we solved the problem, what we want to do is then make it exposable and consumable. So we don't actually do advanced analytics. As a matter of fact, I took the position of, I don't want to do analytics. Actually, I don't really care about analytics. It's not important to me. This is a bit of a shift. And so they would say, well, what do you mean? Well, go hire your own analysts. Go hire your own data scientists. Now, I'm not saying get a whole bunch of people that are starting to work and jump on top of each other and recreating the mess that we're trying to govern, but rather create a community of personas that can share and collaborate in a well-defined environment so that we can collect synergies off of one another. This is really important for us. And I'll show you a couple examples where we started to really get velocity in market when these communities came together to solve a problem. The other aspect to this architecture was that we were able to query, do quickly reporting, create as well new enterprise applications. So businesses themselves, the business groups would come in and say, you know what, I don't want to buy this off the shelf. I might have to anyway, but I just want to experiment. So here, I just want these couple of data assets. I want to stitch them together, and then I want to add some logic around it, and I want to see how it works. Great. If there's something in market that I can find that'll help me do that, fantastic. At least the experiment worked. If I can't find anything because it's so unique, well, then I've just created intellectual property that now becomes an asset to the corporation. Now, how do we leverage it across all our business units? Now, we had to start thinking about how did we organize the data. And so this was important for us because we wanted to ensure that all of our data sources were connected. So now we got into this whole analogy about what is a data lake, and then we started to philosophize. Is it a swamp? Is it a landing? But you have staging. What's the difference between landing and raw? What is a data vault versus 3NF? And again, so quickly the discussion started to spin. We weren't achieving the value because we now started getting really too technical. And so what we said is, look, we want some guiding principles. There is no one rule that fits every single business use case. Why don't we create some very loosely coupled principles that we can govern ourselves by? And one of them was, you know what? We're going to go back to every source of record and we're going to grab it completely raw. We're going to organize it in a governed way just to manage the security and classification and ensure that we can automate through machine learning the metadata, because that's the most important part. The day we do need to use that data, we want to make sure that we actually know what it is and that we can use it. I myself sometimes connect to one of the tables, and it's got some funky name, XLR597-3421. I think some database administrator just wanted to piss me off, because now I have to call 17 people, and I hope that they're still with the company. Is this the daily sales table that was created like 9 years ago? Am I actually touching the right table? Why didn't we call it daily sales or DS something? So we needed to get into the semantic layer of how we were also using the nomenclature. And then we wanted to ensure that we started to open up that self-service capabilities. So if you had the development skills or you had the analytical skills to go down and touch the raw, we would ensure that after it was classified that we would open up in a very secure environment so that you can go and do your experimentation. Some really cool things started coming out of this. Our automotive assortment folks were all data scientists out of Waterloo, which is a very famous university in Ontario. A lot of our mathematicians come from, a lot of engineering and science folks, the STEM folks come from there. And so they started hiring a lot of university grads. And what they started doing is applying physics algebra to their automotive assortment planning problem. So as you imagine, one car might have 6 fits. So it may be an SX, LX, VX, EX, 4 liter, 6 liter, a 1.3, and then you have the technology package. Well, the OEMs, they create this to add value to their offering. However, the brake pad fits all of those vehicles. However, when the car comes as a fit, well, that brake pad has now 6 SKUs. So how do you plan exponentially to the power of 10, tens of thousands of vehicles on a 24-month rolling basis? And this got really, really hard. The amount of relational databases that we're using That cluster kept growing and growing, and their calculations took days and days and days. I think the last time, before the last upgrade, it took them almost about 92 hours to calculate that assortment. And I think they had a cluster of about 50 servers running at full tilt. Today, with our big data platform, with Hadoop, they're able to do it in a couple of hours. So we're really happy. And then moving to the cloud opens up quicker compute for them. The productionalization of those models then required us to think about our development practice. And this was hard. This was super hard. Everyone says it's easy. You just hire more coders. Well, in some of our projects, we just kept hiring more coders. And then the coders were like, so where are the development practices? Where's the continuous delivery and continuous, the CDCI framework? Where do I check in my code? Where do we do the peer review code? I don't know, just get it done. And so one of our very key learnings was that also our staff that has been with us for many years, it was all new skill sets for them. I don't know how to administer a cluster. I know how to go into the traditional relational database and the RDBMS interface, and there's tons of YouTube videos, and I can do that. Every time I watch the YouTube video of them doing it on a Hadoop cluster, I have no idea what they're talking about. Half of the acronyms I'm still looking up. So this was very hard. So a lot of the key architectural decisions, we knew were going to be bad. And it was like a mine that you were going to step on one day, and it was going to blow up, and it was going to hurt. And I'm not egomaniacal to tell you that I've had that situation happen to me. So here's your fair warning. Make sure you understand the implications of a design pattern, and make sure you absolutely understand how it could evolve on you, and have some guiding principles with your architecture and your architects within your teams that they understand what needs to be done when they get into that situation. And again, if you've got support from your partner, they will come in and scratch their heads and say, well, that was stupid of you, but we'll help you fix it. And we really appreciated that. So that's a very key learning. That was a key learning for us to be able to move quickly ahead. So what have I learned? The skill transfers from the traditional EDW to the big data stack is not an easy journey. You have, when you think about your organism, your body rejects foreign organisms that come into it. And it's normal, it's a defense mechanism, and you expect it. But some of the vaccinations that you get, I don't want to get into that whole philosophical thing, but sometimes it can be beneficial for your body. Change is not easy for people that are used to doing the same thing over and over. It becomes almost dogma. And so one of the things that I had to focus a lot on with my team was changing the culture and changing the conversation around not the technology. With technology, you can solve anything. But for us, it was, why are we doing this? And where's the value and the benefit of it? I'd love to tell you today that all of my team members in IT actually sit there and think about the customer. No. They think about time. They think about cost. They think about complexity. They think about, this is stupid, I don't know why I need to do it, and the stupid business guy doesn't know what they want. That stupid business girl keeps coming back and telling me that the metrics are wrong. I don't even know if they know how to calculate it. But what we try to remind everyone in our culture is that directly or indirectly, we're part of every customer experience that happens in our brick and mortar. You know, when Johnny gets his first bike from his grandfather, and 30 years later, he's bringing his kid into the store, directly or indirectly, we shaped that experience. And that's something that I struggle to get my team to constantly think about every day when they're making decisions on the platforms. Yes, the platforms will change, we'll continuously optimize, we'll get better and better, but the key here is always reminding the team why we're using this new technology. What's the value, and how quickly can we deliver it? Because a brick and mortar will eventually die if it doesn't merge the digital and the physical together. The second learning, which was really hard, was to create a governance. So traditionally in the EDW, you have data stewards. They have their own councils. They have their own governance. They go through audit. Everything's well documented. But now you've got schema on what? And these guys are coding what? No, you can't do that. So there was anxiety. So the auditors had a lot of anxiety because they didn't understand the patterns of development. Not only that, the data stewards had become apathetic over time because it was, oh yeah, you want PII data? Yeah, sure, go ahead. You want credit card numbers? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Model against it. So having really good strict rules about what was accessible, what was not accessible, what was appropriate, what was not appropriate. No, you do not do a star select and dump everything to your laptop. And no, you can't go home with that CSV that you just did a dump on with all that customer data because you want to work at 3 a.m. in the morning. So we had to change the way folks access data. We had to change the way the processes we put around to automate a lot of the manual tasks around governance and around access and security. The third really important thing that we learned was that there is no true self-serve, no matter how hard you try. I mean, it's the utopia. Eh? I want to go to an interface, and I just want to be able to tell the interface, hockey sticks, Q1, sales to date, Toronto, Sherwood, and just visualize it. My dream is to democratize all of our data sets so that anybody in the company can come and do this, because it'll shape and change the way our customers shop. I would like us not to have to fear about asking a stupid financial question. Can you give me a running forecast on my dead net profit? Using natural English to achieve that type of analysis through assisted intelligence through a machine is our dream. That's the true self-service. But can we get there realistically within the next 24 or 36 months? Absolutely not. So the utopia of self-serve for us right now is being able to empower our business units not to fear the systems or the access to them. It's giving them the tools, and not talking about Tableau, Qwilk, or any other tool that you want to use, but rather talking about what is the metric that you're trying to achieve, what's the business problem you're trying to solve, and how can you collaborate with the community because maybe someone else has solved it. And when we were able to change that conversation, we were able to create really amazing digital products that have impacted our business in profound ways that we never anticipated. One of them was we realized we could do a search engine on our products. The whole goal was people should not, well, first of all, you can't buy what you can't find, and people don't know what they want, and they may not be able to find it once they do know what they want. And Google is not your best friend, because if Wayfair or Amazon or any other site is paying much bigger dollars on keywords, the search engine optimization will push them away actually from your site. They'll go somewhere else. So now you're losing market share in a market you didn't even know you were playing in. Everyone in the industry said, you guys are nuts. You should not be building your own search engine. You can buy a search engine. The people have been doing this for many, many years. There's no way, with the expertise that you don't have, there's no way you can actually build a viable product that would bring you any revenue. Boy, were they wrong. And we're so happy that they were wrong. Our communities got together and they built the first in-house search engine that gives us that competitive advantage. Because not only at the same time are we seeing what people are searching, we're actually creating audiences and segments based on that, and we're pushing that back to all of our loyalty platforms, as well as we're starting to model personalized behavior. I said earlier we had 11 million customers. We have 11 million different ways to look at a shopping experience. This type of rich data gives us the opportunity now to make something really personalized for our customers. And with the next reiteration of this platform, we're looking at embedding natural language processing to it. So again, you can go into a store, into any kiosk, and not have to type, not have to scan, not have to fumble with the kid running around the cart. You can just go up to any pole or look for a sales associate who's underpaid and under-motivated to help you. You can go to any of the kiosks and just talk to it. I'm looking for a hockey stick. By the way, I keep using hockey because it's the easiest thing I know. The second one was, because we're a retailer and such a large geographical region in Canada, we actually track 7 microclimates. Interestingly enough, we've realized that the weather affects our business more profoundly than we ever thought. We always knew, well, when the first snowfall hits, everyone is just cashing in because everyone's getting their winter tires changed. When it gets warm, yeah, we're selling t-shirts and shorts and socks and running shoes. So the assortments were planned always around these microclimates. But what we didn't realize is when we started modeling those weather patterns against the assortment planning. And this changed the way we looked at it. So why send a specific set of tires to one side of the country when we know with good probability 5 days before the first snowfall in a specific area. So reroute all those tires to that store. And start calling our customers, our valued customers, or start pushing out email campaigns to go get your tires changed. Changing that window of tire change increased Atibida by almost 0.5%. And that was just one use case. And there are many more that we're looking at. Now, with all the data, we also decided in Canada, it is a well-known fact that we have a second official currency. It's the Canadian Tire dollar. We actually printed money, and it was as colorful as the federal government's. It was 5 cent, 10 cent, 25 cents, 50 cents, and $1. And there's still some pubs in Canada where you can go and exchange your hard-earned 4% back on every purchase for a pint. But we realized that having that type of cash and not being a real bank, well, we are a real bank, but having that type of loyalty program didn't meet the needs of the changing customer, especially millennials. Imagine giving them a paper money to go exchange for goods and services. It's not going to work. So we decided about 4 years ago to digitize it. And this year, actually just a few months ago, with the help of the team, we're able to take it to the next level. Adding an Elite World card, an Elite World MasterCard, we created what we call the triangle. So we have about 8 or 9 banners across our ecosystem. And so now you can earn and burn in any one of those retail locations, including gas. The card gives you back, I think, something like 7 cents off of premium in one of our gas bars, 3% back on groceries, 4% back on anything you buy within any one of our locations. I'm promoting it, so for the Canadians in the room that have not subscribed, you might want to think about it. Anywho, what we started doing with this program is we started seeing that using our search engine capability and our data sets, we started mirroring them. So again, the community coming together to think about how do we make individualized offers more of a real thing and not just a utopian thing. Happy to say that in the first month, we had 300,000 new Canadians sign up for the credit card, which gave us new data points and new offers. As a matter of fact, if you log into our application, after 1 or 2 purchases, it actually starts to model you. It's not a very good model, but at least it's a start. After 1 month of at least 100 transactions, it starts to build enough of a good model where they can actually now start to segment and auto-create individualized offers and promotions that you can activate. Where are we going next with our platform? We want the business to start thinking about the shareholder value. We want to be able to open up our data sets to third-party developers, obviously with some good governance and security in place. We want to be able to do real-time changes in our ecosystems. So today, one of the key features of our website is you can go and find your product, or your product will find you. It will tell you what aisle, which store, and how much availability in stock. And you're thinking, kind of everybody does a version of that, right? But what we want to do now is start to push you offers based on limited availability, and maybe even start playing with the pricing. Some of our data scientists have these wacky ideas that if there's exclusivity on a product, the price margins start to increase. So we're starting to look at that. When there's special events happening in the area, whether it be a parade or whether it be something more profound like the Stanley Cup playoffs, how can we make the assortment change to model that behavior that's happening in the society around us? We also wanted to make sure that our employees were becoming more productive. The whole justification around why we went to this architecture was not to save money or to cut jobs. It was to continue to spend more money in higher value work that we would now want to do, rather than trying to continuously go for low value grunt work that took a long time. Questions? Because I just babbled for about 30 minutes or so. And I'm pretty sure you're probably thinking, well, that's interesting, but that can't be real, can it? Yes?
You obviously had executive support to do all of this, but being a store that, is fighting for margins and whatever, it's a large investment. How did you get these guys on board, or were they on board and pushed you?
Yeah, so the question was, I'll just repeat it for the room. Yeah. It was, obviously, we had executive support, and this would be a cost. and how we were able to convince them to make that a large investment in this new approach. I'd say it was a two-pronged approach. The first one was reallocation of our dollars. So if we continued to do nothing, we would still have the maintenance cost on the old platforms. And the productivity would never really increase. As a matter of fact, we could justify that over time it would take longer and harder to reverse engineer a lot of the manual stuff that we were doing in our relational environments. We were, just give you an example, I've got about 37,000 production ETLs today. In the new model, I don't materialize or transform the data until I need it. Whereas before, we would have to do it completely because we wanted to structure it and model it. And so it required a lot of manual processing, a lot of manual scripting, a lot of manual testing. Today, we were able to reduce that amount of effort. Now we can become more productive. So we don't have to add more staff to do more projects. We can just take on more work. So there was a productivity component, there was a cost savings component, but then where it got really exciting is when we started thinking about our machine learning or AI ambitions. Because now with that productivity, we can go after those use cases that traditionally would take a whole lot longer, or we would just maybe go out and buy something from someone. And now you got this really fancy black box that no one understands, and it's spitting out a bunch of stuff, and we hope that we bought the right one, that it's not negatively impacting us. I thought I saw some other hands here. Yes?
I think one of your slides you had shown both warehouse as well as analytics.
Yes.
Do you have any traditional warehouse now left, or is this fully replacement?
Yeah, so do we still do data warehousing within our environments? So it's not this or that, because that was a philosophical discussion that wasted a lot of our time. The data warehouse is a great pattern, and it's still used for historical data. And so what we're trying to do is get away from, is it this or is it that? It's what's the business case? What's the use case that supports that business case? And then how much data do I need to keep? So on the financial side, I have to keep 7 years for the regulator. So a data warehousing pattern of some kind on top of my new Hadoop infrastructure makes absolute sense. In other areas where I only need data that's created in moment or in flight, well, I wouldn't want to go and do the data warehouse pattern because it doesn't meet my need. So it wasn't one or the other. It was which one made sense for what we were trying to accomplish.
Variation on that then, your BI, you said is that more done off of the lake?
Yes, so our BI, both in the lab and the factory, attached to those marts. So when we land raw, we allow experimentation, we allow BI to happen immediately on those raw data sets if they know what they're looking for and they have the capability, or in some cases they'll ask us, can you prepare the data for us, because we don't want to wrangle it. And so we would then allow them to go out and do that, and then they would create their own lab cubes and slice and dice to their heart's desire. In other cases, once they were done with that, then we would create more of an information type mart, where then we would expose it completely to the enterprise. So it wasn't just domain specific anymore. So now finance, and I'll give you a little anecdote. One of the hardest things a little while back was, well, what's the true COGS, the cost of goods? So if I went into one banner, the data sciences community or the analysts would say 101% this quarter. Now the logical question is it 100%? Is it 1% or 101%? So did we grow just 101% above what we did last year? That's phenomenal. Big bonuses, everyone. Great job. No. We got the 100%. We just incrementally went up 1%. Well, that's a very difficult conversation because your CFO is pissed. Why don't you just show me the 1% growth? That's all I want to see, right? So we didn't have a way to standardize such a simple financial metric. And when you would talk to the finance folks, they would say, you know what? We're the ones that own that data. We should be the ones telling everyone what COGS is. And then you went to the merchants, they would be like, yeah, that's cool, but I don't really care what they're doing because I just want to see, if I buy X amount of units, what's my margin? And if you went to the vendors, they'd be like, well, I don't care about any one of those lenses. What I really want to know is just this piece right here. And so it created a very fragmented view of the world and was very hard to make a really good, cohesive decision. By coming back and saying, look, we're going to put some governance around our metrics on the BI layer, Once the domain expertise figures out how to expose it, we have two ways. You can create it, you can rewrite it if you want, but then you go to your data steward to accept it. If they accept your changes, then we expose it higher up so that the BI layers stay consistent as possible. Thought I saw another hand. Yes?
I guess one question is, so you've kind of changed from organizing logical data marts to driving individual business use cases. How do you prioritize those business use cases?
Yeah, so how do we prioritize the business use cases that drives our development in our ecosystem? I would love to say that we figured it out 100%. We have not. So today, I'm a pretty pragmatic individual. So in my teams, God bless that they work really hard at working around me when I make mistakes. So what we do is we have two modes. And this was another thing that we grinded our teeth on. We're just starting to launch this. We actually took our DevOps team and we created two different Kanbans. We took some of the developers that were really good at platform and the support side. And then we took the developers that were good at project and development, full stack, and we put them on this side. And so everyone got really excited and say, oh yeah, I'm going to work on projects. It's going to be something new every time. And then the other support folks kept saying, shit, I got stuck with the bad job. I got to check in and support the crap that these guys are throwing over the wall. But the sneaky part is we told them, hey, when you do the project, you sit in this chair and you're going to carry it through warranty and then you're going to go put it in production and support it. And because you freed up a chair on this side, since you've been doing so good on the tickets, you move over here and start working on a project. And so we started to create that very fluid movement around our scrum lines and our boards. So as the projects started lining up, either they went and got dedicated resources where they would then come into that scrum line, or they would just pick up the work based on the priority. There are some business units that say, you know what, I don't want to go into your queue, so I'll work with you. Can we grow your organization? From a chargeback perspective, I don't mind because it's easy to take on new staff. Of course, though, the other learning there is you never want to put a third party managing a third party. We all know that that's insane and you would never do it. But really, when you're jammed up against the wall, it's easy to do that. But then you end up always paying. So we're really strict about making sure that there's an internal resource that always maintains consistency on code, consistency on the development practice, and retains the intellectual property so that it can be documented and repeatable. So thank you very much. If there are no other questions, I appreciate you coming. Enjoy your evening and enjoy your beverages and your fine dining. Thank you.